Welcome everyone. Today we're going to run through our P6-Scrubber, and we've got a few new features in this version, so we'll talk about those as we run through. I'm Nicole Jardin. I'm coming to you from Calgary. Cold, rainy, stormy today. With me is Sue Fermelia. She's coming to you from Wyoming. Hot, sweaty, no rain, I think, is what we're getting. So we're in two opposite extremes here. Yeah, go ahead, Sue.
Absolutely.
She
are
wants
bang on.
she wants our weather. I want her weather. So there you go. Typical. We are never happy with what we've got. So let's talk first and foremost about why we made P6-Scrubber. So this tool, we had a version of the tool without a sort of user interface for quite a few years that we were using with clients. And then some of them said, well, we want to be able to do this too. So that's when we decided to put a user interface on it, really in earnest, probably last year or the year before. And really in earnest, we've been getting more and more clients using it in the last year. So it is a need, and the need is that we have a P6 and we import schedules from maybe our clients or perhaps our contractors, subcontractors. So that's really causes some struggles because you want your P6 environment to stay nice and tidy. You don't want any collisions or colliding of data from different imports. And unfortunately, the current importing functionality doesn't give you all the controls that you might want in terms of controlling the data that's coming in. So that's really why we made P6-Scrubber. So I'm going to start with a quick question. How does your company deal with projects from outside your company, just to get an idea of what some of you are doing? So we usually see a few different scenarios. Some of the groups that we work with, they have a separate database that they use for importing schedules. They do the cleanups in there, and then they grab that and put it into the production environment. The second one is, and this is very, very bad idea, but we've seen it done. People open the XER file and start changing what's in there. Very bad idea. We've seen people corrupt their P6 database badly by doing this. And if you do this, you are null and voiding your support with Oracle. So it's a very bad idea, but we have seen people do it. And then import them into their production and then do a bunch of cleanup. Okay. So those are sort of the common ones that we've seen. So if you want to let us know how you're doing it, that's always interesting for us. I'll go ahead and show the results for the people who have answered, and we'll keep going. Okay. So those are mostly the three common ones. And really the struggle is when you import, you don't have all the controls you need. So your P6 starts to get very polluted. Okay, you end up with extra codes, extra user-defined fields. You might have codes, more than one code that should be together, and now they're separated, so it makes all your reporting more difficult. You could also have things that are not coming into your specifications. Okay, so some groups that we work with have quite strong scheduling, quality control parameters. They've been given to the contractors and they want them followed. And if they're not followed, they want to be able to advise them quickly. So this is something that's quite good in P6-Scrubber, as well as P6QA. So we kind of have two tools that help you with that sort of functionality. And of course, when I mentioned earlier, colliding of data. So we need to be careful for things like calendars. So one of the out-of-the-box calendars that you're probably all familiar with in P6 is the 5-day-a-week work week. Everyone has that. It's out of the box. But that doesn't mean that I don't go in and modify it. And you have one called the same thing, and you modify it. Now, when those two come together, one is going to win. So the import is going to overwrite it, depending on your choices in P6. Or If you say don't allow the data to come in, so on your import, you say don't import or use existing, then your calendar is going to be different. Okay, so those are things that are problematic, very problematic, because you're essentially changing the schedule. Okay, so those are the sorts of struggles that we deal with, and we need to find a better way to help us with that. And that's what we think we've succeeded with P6-Scrubber. So one more quick question, and Sue's going to show us the software in a minute. So in terms of how much time do you think you're dealing with cleaning up? Now, of course, that's going to vary widely. So if you do a lot of imports, so some of our clients, they get updates from their contractor every week, some every 2 weeks, and then some every month. So just depending on how much you're importing, it really is going to vary. So the reason we ask that question is because it's important, right? We want to make sure a lot of our tools we've built to try and make sure that the folks doing the scheduling have time to do the scheduling, not all this data management, data inputting. So that's really why we ask this question, just to see and get a feel for, what are you dealing with on a day-to-day basis, week-to-week basis. And then how can we help you guys close those gaps and get rid of the not as valuable time that you spend in any given work week. Okay, so that's really why we're curious about that. So I shared those results real quick. And again, you don't have to answer, but if you'd like to, go ahead. Okay, so let me touch on, I think I've touched on some of the benefits. And in this latest release, we had a few clients that also wanted the ability to be able to scrub Microsoft project files. So currently we have XER support, XML support, and just recently we've added Microsoft project support. So a foundational item on Microsoft project support, and we'll enhance the features in the next few months as well. Okay, so that's just something of note for this particular version that Sue will show you. So how it works. So it's quite simple, and she's going to run through it. She's going to do a live example so you can see it in action. But you have a file, you want to scrub it. So you select the file, you bring it in, and you marry it potentially with a predefined scrubbing routine that you want it to go through, or what we call a definition. And that's really handy because, of course, if you're getting a file from a contractor every week or 2 weeks, you don't want to have to reset all the scrubbing parameters. So she's going to show you that you can save the way you do the scrubbing for a particular contractor. Now, you may have a set standard across your whole organization in which everyone can share. So there's that option too, and she'll touch on that and show that to you. We also check for some of the data things that have been plaguing us over the years, the POBS and the risk types, which some of you have probably experienced. Some of you might have got some of our little utilities to clean them up. And our P6 loader has been cleaning those up for a long time. But so we've got those in Scrubber as well. Now, good thing of note, I think in version 20, I think it was, Oracle got their arms around those risk types, so that shouldn't be plaguing us anymore. And the POBS items are from older versions, so hopefully that'll start going away now. And we can also check calendars, and of course, checking the standard things, the user-defined fields, the codes at all the levels, projects, activities, resources, resource assignments, and cost code items as well. Now we also have some validations. So some of our clients have a mandate on project numbering schemes and naming schemes. So that's in there too. So some validations are in there as well. Okay, so let me just see. I see that there's a question. Let's just see real quick. Sue's got them. Okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I've answered them. And we
Yeah.
had a couple who just signed up and I just approved them, so they should be able to
Okay.
get in now.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sue. Okay, so let's, I guess I'll turn it over to you, and
All
then
right.
you can start showing it in action. So let me
All right.
just transfer the session over to you. Here it comes.
Okay. And I'm going to get my screen shared here. Okay, so really the first thing I want to show you is kind of what we mean by having your database have things imported with things that you may not want to either come in or come in the way that they will on a regular XER XML import. So you can see here in this database that I have displayed, I have quite a few resources that have come in, and they're in no particular order. They're kind of, have come in just on their own. This is because they were not um, put under, when you import, they don't get put under any type of hierarchy or anything like that. So you can end up with a whole lot of resources that are standing alone that really make no rhyme or reason as to what they're used for. Um, that's one thing that we can do with P6-Scrubber is we can land these into hierarchies in your resources to help kind of organize that and not get this long list of just kind of individual resources in your database. Another thing that we find is that we have calendars that come in. Again, so many calendars that have been imported in at the global level, um, depending on the project that they're in. Now, these aren't calendars that are necessarily going to be used by everyone in our database. And one thing I like to point out up here is that even though this one has a space in it, this again is a standard 5-day work week, which is delivered with P6. If someone had a calendar in their database that matched any of the names in yours, so if I come down and we take a look at the standard, and it looks like I don't have it, standard 5-day work week here. Some of them have been appended, but if I have one that comes in on my XDR XML that has that same name, it's going to overwrite whatever I had defined as that calendar. And that may or may not be the same thing that it's overwritten with. So it could potentially really mess up your schedules that are using that calendar if it's overwritten. Another example I want to kind of show are activity codes at the global level. So if I go to my activity codes, I'm just going to stretch this out a bit. We can see that there are oodles and oodles of activity codes that have been imported in. Again, not necessarily ones that we want to have, like, these numbers probably belong to a particular project. But when it was imported in, it was at the global level, and we got a bunch of global activity codes that we really just did not need.
Yeah,
Um,
junk.
we could,
It's a bunch
yeah,
of junk.
it's junk. Exactly.
Yep.
So it's going, P6-Scrubber is going to give us that ability to roll those down. Both in the calendars as well as the activity codes, so that they can be maintained in our project, but they're not polluting our global codes and calendars. So just a couple of examples of what can happen to your database when you do have that you know having a free for all, basically, is what I like to say, in uh, coming into or bringing items into your database. So first of all, what I want to do as we're looking at Scrubber right now is that we have several deployment options on this. We have a live version, which I am going to show today, or we have a standalone. A standalone is not connected to any database whatsoever. You can still define, your database and things like that. However, if it is connected to your database, you're going to be able to see what matches to what already exists in your database. So I'm going to go ahead and actually sign in here, and let's take a look at what we've got. And what I should have done is I'm going to actually just start a new definition here so that we blank everything out. Now, on the left hand side is where we can handle the things that in that give us the most headache, I guess, in when we're importing a project from an outside source. Or if you are exporting it out and you want to clean some things up prior to export, you could also use this tool. So it can actually move both ways, whether you're sending out an XER or whether you're bringing in an XER from an outside source. So we've got some modules that are essentially grouped by a topic here. So if we go and look at codes, I can see that I have the ability to put some codes in. And those codes are at, of course, activity level, resource level, what have you. Now, I can go from here and, of course, first of all, I'm going to want to enable the module because I want to tell P6-Scrubber I do want to run this scrub module. So I can start adding these individually. So if I wanted to start a new, or I wanted to define a new activity code, let's say, I can do an add. I could go in and I could, type in my activity code. I can say what I want to do with it, whether I wanted to scrub it or keep it. In this case, I could keep it. And because I am connected to a database, I could actually go in and check to see what I have already out there. So, I could map it in and say, here it is. Now, if I were doing this standalone, I am not going to have this matches P6 column that is this displayed here. But when it's a green check mark, it's telling me it matches in P6. Now, with codes, of course, we need a dictionary. So with a dictionary, I can do that as well. Now, if I'm adding these from my P6 database, perhaps I have a bunch of items that I want to, I want to add in the dictionary that I have in P6. So if I can go to my activity codes and let me go down to vendor here. And display all my values, I can actually take all of these values, I can copy them and go back to P6-Scrubber, and I can do this bulk add here. When I paste it in, and this can be from any type of data, if you had it in an Excel spreadsheet, for instance. And it's going to allow me to remove the first row header because I did have the header that came in, and it's showing me what actually came in as my values. Well, I don't need that color, so I can remove that. And then I can go in and I can apply all these. Then I could start setting my action here and saying that I wanted to keep these. So if you were to build one from scratch, this is how you would do that. And that's going to be the case with user-defined fields, with your resources. All of that have the ability for that bulk edit to add those in if you're doing it manually. Now, another way that we can do this is, first of all, I'm going to clear out what I've already entered. And I am going to use a file that I have received. So I can go into this import files here, and I can browse to the file that I want to bring in. And let me get to the right place where I've got my files for the demo. And I can select the file that I want to import in so I can take a look at what's in there already. So when I open that and import it, P6-Scrubber is going to go out. It's going to bring out all the code types, the values, user-defined fields, etc. Then when I apply it, it's going to show me everything that is in that particular XCR. Now, I can go through on each one of these. I can enable and I can decide what I want to do with each piece. So you see that I have a warning here. When I hover, it's going to tell me that I have a dictionary value in this case. If it didn't match, if I didn't have anything in my database that matched P6, it's going to give me another type of warning saying it couldn't find that code type. But in this case, it's telling me my dictionary value failed. So if I open this up, I can see that here's my dictionary value that's coming in, but I do have this district code there. So what I could do is I can go in and I can blank this out and I can see what is my dictionary value in my database. So I have District 5. It's just we call it D5. So I could remap that so that it matched what I have in my database. Now you'll notice at each level in the codes, I have the ability to say I want to scrub any extra codes that I don't have defined. So when I save this definition, and I'll show you how we save these in a minute, but if I want to save this definition and I use it on another file that has additional, in this case, code types that come in, I can choose to just automatically remove those. If I don't have them defined, it will remove them. At the dictionary value level, I can choose to do the same thing. So if I want to allow the new values to come in based on what my contractor has sent to me, I can allow that to come in as well.
Yeah, so this works great because if you've got a standard set up with the contractor, you get that year. And then if they decide to add more stuff in their schedule for their benefit, you're not going to be dealing with that at every time they give you an update. You've already got your standard step, and everything else is going to be scrubbed. So this works really well. It saves you a lot of time.
Absolutely. UDFs, again, it's going to come in and it's going to tell you which ones you have that aren't matching, which aren't matching, and you could choose, to keep or scrub them out. Scrub is going to remove them from the file so that they do not get imported. So I could choose, several of these to scrub out. Maybe I don't want my WBS codes to come in at all. What I can do here is I can choose what level of user-defined fields, what subject area do I want to allow and which ones I don't. So I could say I want to allow project UDFs to come in, but I don't want any WBS ones. So I can check mark this and have them scrubbed out. In the case, go ahead.
And Sue, point out that little new feature there so
Oh,
people see
absolutely.
that.
Right. So anything that comes in new, even if you have a definition that is applied, anything that is new that comes in with this import is going to be marked with this new flag. So you know that that was not originally in your definition. So it's going to mark it as new. So you're going to be easily be able to tell what was not there before in your definition, and maybe you want to handle that particular data. In the way of my submittal date, you can see I've got a little light bulb here, and it's saying, there might be some values that are very close to what is in your database, but it's not right on. So in that case, again, I could go in, I could start typing in, and let's say I want to remap it to this SCR submitted date. Then I could go in and remap that. So it's going to give me a suggestion if it has something that's close. If not, it'll just ask you, do you want to just rename this at this point? Let me go into activity codes. Now, with activity codes, I can see again that I've got some remapping that might need to occur here. Let's say I want to go ahead and allow it to come in just the way it is. I can go in and I can click on that little light bulb, and I can say, yeah, I do want to allow it to come in, which is going to star it and let me know I've allowed this to come into my database. It's not there now, but I'm going to let it come in. Um, if I had, say, some global codes that I want to maintain in my schedule in this file, but I want to push them down. I don't want to pollute out my global codes. What I can do is I can go in to this roll down here, and I can mark it to be rolled down to the project level. So I can demote these global codes to the project level.
Yeah, that would be excellent for things like equipment codes or geographical areas that are specific to the project. So those
Correct.
are good codes. You want them, but they don't make sense to share them up at the global.
At the global level, right. Um, so user defined fields, these ones all are matching. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep them all. On resources, for resources, we have the ability to not only, and my scroll does this every once in a while. It's a thing with the browser, so I'm going to have to not be able to scroll here. But what I can do, all these are matching at this point. So, but I want to bring these resources into a parent that I've already created in P6. So this is going to help you avoid all those stragglers down at the bottom of your resource list. What I can do is I can expand these up. I could choose what parent I want to put them under, and it's going to bring in all of those resources underneath that parent. If I wanted to remap, again, I could go ahead and decide, I wanted to bring them into something different. Maybe I want to do something, I want to prefix them on with something else. I could certainly remap those and allow those to come in. The same goes resource codes. We've got the same as our other codes. We can see what dictionary values are coming in and whether they match. User defined fields, same way. We also can handle units of measure. So most often, you already have units of measure that have been defined in your database, and so you don't necessarily want to add a bunch that are actually depicting the same thing. So we'll show whether you have it there. You could choose to have it come in, or perhaps you've already got it out there and you want to map it to what your definition looks like. You can go ahead and remap that and not have additional units of measure come in. We also have our calendars and how we can handle those. So in the case of calendars, you could maintain them at the global level if you wanted, or probably ideally, you would want to roll these down so that you maintain those calendars. However, you don't add these to your list of global calendars that are not necessarily important to your um, organization um, explicitly. Then again, you have that option that if any additional calendars, other than the ones that I've defined here to roll down, I'm going to automatically roll them down to the project level. So I have the ability to do that. I can also look at um, the project calendars that are contained within this file. Now, this was a specific request we had from one of our clients who used the tool. They just wanted to be able to see what kind of project calendars, in addition to the global calendars, do they have there. So we provided this for them. Um, we also can handle resource calendars. So let's say I wanted to remap this standard 5-day resource calendar to another resource calendar that I have. I don't want to overwrite this one in my database, so I am going to remap it to either a brand new calendar, or I could just remap it to an existing calendar if that was there. So you do have that ability with resource calendars as well. Now, roles act very much like resources. So if I wanted to, I can actually go in and decide where I want to land my resource, what parent I want to, or I want to land my role, excuse me, under. So I could choose my role, and it's going to allow me to do that. Now, in the case of where I have a remap, maybe I want to go ahead and add these in. I can do an OK here and allow those to come in. Cost accounts, I can handle the same way. Maybe I want to create them. Maybe I want to remap them. Maybe I want to just remove them completely. Maybe those cost accounts aren't important in my P6 uh, area, or in my P6 database. Another thing that we can also handle is the responsible manager on your project. Instead of bringing in the responsible manager that has come in from your outside source, I can actually remap that to where I am going to bring that into. So I could choose the new responsible manager for this project and allow that to be remapped. So when I import it in, it's automatically going to be set. It's not going to create brand new OBS elements that are not pertinent to my database. Now, when I'm ready to do this, to save this, I've gotten everything set here, and I think I have everything set. It'll give me an error if I haven't dealt with with all of my pieces of information. I can go down and I can save this definition so that I could use it again and again. So I can go down, I can say I want to save, and let's say I want to save as. So I'm just going to call this demo example. And I have some different ways that I can share this out. I can keep it personally for just me to be able to access. I could share it with a team. So if you had a team that was working on a particular project and you wanted them to use a particular definition when they are scrubbing a file, I could also go in and I could assign it to that team. And then if I do have the another option is to save it as a global. So I could save this as a global definition, and anyone who uses the tool, of course, could utilize that definition. Now I'm just going to save this as a personal one right now. I could put notes in, and the notes are going to show up on my my menu of definitions that have already been saved. So I'm going to go ahead and apply, and we'll see if I handled everything that I should have. Okay, I didn't. So it's now telling me, okay, you need to go into the activity code type module as well as the resource module and deal with some data that you did not deal with. There's something that is not matching, that is not in line with your database, and it's telling me that. So I'm not going to go and redo that all again. What I'm going to do is show you how I would use a, a definition once I had it established. So again, I can go in and I can look at my definitions. I can see what global definitions I have available. Those have the little icon of the world next to them. I can see my team definitions, and I can also see just my personal definitions down here. So I'm going to select the definition that I want to use for my scrubbing. I already have it defined, so I don't have to redefine it. I can simply tell it to load this definition. When I load the definition, I'm going to be able to come in and find, let's say, in the way of my codes, what I have, in the way of my uh, UDFs, and how I'm handling them. So you can see I've got some that are scrubbed, some that I've kept, things like that. Now, I can use this to scrub my file now. So in order to scrub a file, I go into Scrub Files, and um, I'm going to go out and select the file or files that I want to scrub. So let's say, for instance, I have two files that I want to use this definition on. I can select both of those files at the same time, and I can open it up. And then when I hit process, it's going to do these in that order. So it's going to go ahead and process both of them for me. So I don't have to go in and do them each individual, as long as they are I'm wanting to apply that definition to them across the board. Now, once they're completed, I have the ability to view a report of what changed when I scrubbed this file. So when I go to view the report, it's going to open up it as an HTML report. It's going to give me some summary information up at the top, and I can see that I actually had some changes that occurred because I have some red boxes here. Now, as I scroll down, I can see more granularly what happened with each one of those changes. So in my project code type, my gray boxes are telling me what my definition was. And in the color boxes, it's telling me how it handled each piece of information, in this case, for my project codes. So on my project codes, I kept my client, kept my client type. Those had no changes in them. However, my district, I had a dictionary that value that was handled. And then in my type of schedule, I actually removed that. Now underneath, here's my dictionary for my district. And this is where I mapped it from DIST5 to the value that I had in my database, which was D5. So it's telling me it was remapped. And it'll go ahead and it'll do that for each data element that you have handled in that scrub. Now, if this is not correct, if something didn't occur the way that I wanted it to, I could simply go back into my definition, adjust what was handled differently than what I expected, and then save it and then rescrub. If I am satisfied with what occurred, I can then download my results. And so when I download my results, it's going to actually download as a compressed file, and I can tell it to go ahead and save that. Now, when it comes out, I got to bring this over here where you can see it. When this comes out, I have actually two files that are provided. I have my scrubbed file, and I can tell that these were created by Scrubber because they are appended with the date and time that they were scrubbed. I have, in this case, my XER file that I scrubbed. And I also have a version of that report in HTML format, so that if I wanted to maybe give some feedback to my contractor, I could use that. I could use the whole uh, report if I want to, or I could cut and paste or copy and paste just portions of that report and send that back to them and give them feedback and let them know kind of what I found when I scrubbed it. Maybe you have some specifications that you have asked them to adhere to. You might want to give that feedback to them if they didn't quite get that right when they did that. So now I'm I'm ready to essentially import that file into my database. So if I go
So
ahead.
Sue, before you do that,
Uh-huh.
let's talk about one other use case. So we keep
Sure.
saying when you're
Right.
receiving a file, but if you're a contractor and you have to give a file to the engineering group that's going to review it or your client, and there's stuff you don't want them to have because you don't need to share that information. For example, resources or costs, because it's a lump sum job and you don't have to provide that detail. What most of our clients do, they copy the project and they start removing everything. So you can use Scrubber that way too. So you take the file out of your P6, then you put it through Scrubber, and then you hand it over to the client. Okay, so that also is a strategy. So it's not only if you're receiving a file, it's also if you want to share a file and there's things you
All right.
don't want to share. So
Absolutely. Yeah. I always
yeah, we all do
think
it.
of, think of coming in as from a contractor's perspective,
Yeah,
or having a contractor file come in.
yeah. Okay.
So I'm going to hop on over to P6 again. And I've already imported a file that's been scrubbed. So when I have an imported file that has been scrubbed, I have the ability to display some indicators telling me what was handled in my file when I scrubbed it. I also have a notebook that can come in with that information of what changed on when I did the scrub. So this is the same report we looked at previously, but it's in a notebook with that schedule. Um, Now, this is a great idea, especially if you might be involved with claims or something that of that. You're going to maintain that history. You're going to be able to go in and say, okay, this is what happened. We scrubbed this file, but this is exactly what changed in this file, so that you have proof, you have backup that is going to that you could utilize in that sort of situation. Um, So when you do this, you can also go into your activities, and you can see by activity what occurred with that scrub with each individual activity. So I've got some yellows here. It looks like my vendor code came in just fine. We copied and pasted from here, so it should match up perfectly. On my work type, I actually have some that are missing. So those could have been ones that were scrubbed out, and it's alerting me to the fact that, hey, you might want to take a look at this and see if there's some issues with this not having a value at this point. On my discipline, I've got a couple that were actually created here. So they've got that X telling me that they were created. And again, my yellows on those ones that did not have any values with them. It's telling me my cost accounts. Overall, I can look at them. I can look at them individually. So we have that ability there as well. Now, I did remap some resources on this. So I wouldn't normally have, of course, the original and um, the scrubbed one coming into the same database. But in this case, I do have that so that I can show you what's happened with the resources. So I'm just going to change this really quickly. Um, and I can take a look here, and I can see that I did have on my original file that they had a resource ID on them, and I actually remapped them to a different one. And on the roles, you can't see this as well, but these actually went into a different tree as well as when I imported it. But it's telling me that it's showing me that, hey, these were created, and they are now part of my database. Um, so we do find in a lot of cases that a lot of people just want to do a really quick prefix or roll down on their projects or on their files when they get them. We do have that ability as well with P6-Scrubber. So I'm just going to go down and show you what Simple Scrubber looks like. So Simple Scrub. So on a Simple Scrub, what you can do is you could put in a common separator. Let's say I want to do a dash. And then for each one of my prefixes, maybe I want to bring in, my project, my codes, just as they are, but maybe I want to put a prefix onto all of them. I could go ahead and I could do that. Now, in the case of my global activity codes, though, I don't want those to come in at the global level. I could actually say I just want to roll them all down here. Now, and then as I go down, I could choose what I want to do with the rest of them. So maybe I don't want to have any role code types or any assignment code types to come in. I can do that as well. I could also roll down all of my calendars at this point, or I could prefix them. And again, my scroll isn't going, so I'm going to just refresh my browser so that I can get my scroll to start working again. Um, there we go. Now I just need to put this in here really quick again. Let's see, I don't want to import these. I wanted to be able to show you what else we can handle on our scrub here. So want to keep my UDFs. I can decide not to import my roles. I could decide not to uh, import my resources. If I don't want shifts and curves, resource shifts and curves, I could also do that. I could then save this, and then this is just a really quick way to define what I wanted to do with that. So if you don't need to go into each individual piece of data and decide what you're going to do with it, maybe you just want to prefix it all, or maybe you just don't want to include it in the file. You can definitely do that here in a quick way. Now, one last thing that I want to just take a look at before I go into the Microsoft project piece is we do have this general area here in Scrubber. Um, so the notebook that you saw that was imported, if I did not want that notebook to be created, I could certainly turn that off. Maybe I want my notebook in there, but I don't want to create the indicators. I could turn the indicators off. We also have the ability that if I were either sending this file to someone who had a lower version of P6 than I did, or if I'm receiving one from someone who has a higher version, I can actually demote the version that it is supplied in. So let's say I'm in 22 right now, and or I received it from 22. Somebody's on the cloud and they have version 22, but I only have version 21. I could set this and it's going to demote it to that version. So when I import it, it's going to have a successful import when I import that as well. One last thing I just want to visit very quickly because I know we're running out of time. But I'm going to first just say I want a new definition. And we are now able to handle Microsoft project files. So I have a Microsoft Project XML, and it has to be an XML format. I could open that up and I could import that in. And what that's going to allow me to do is then deal with the same pieces of data. Of course, I'm not going to have as much data from a Microsoft project file because they don't have activity codes. I don't believe they have like global calendars, things like that. So I could import this in and I could handle the data in my Microsoft Project XML in the same fashion. So you can see that I've got user defined fields that come in, I've got resources, and I've got a few calendars. So when I apply these, I could go in and take a look at my user-defined fields, which I believe are at the activity level, and I could handle those. I could also handle my resources in here. So I could go out and decide how I wanted to handle those resources. I could again import them into a parent that I already had defined. And then in the way of calendars, I believe they're just project calendars. It's going to show me that I have, a calendar that is coming in for this particular project. So we are able to handle and scrub Microsoft XML files as well. So with that, before I move along, I want to make sure that we have questions answered before I give it back to Nicole.
Yeah, yeah, I think we're not too bad on questions. So early
Okay.
on, there was a question about whether we deal with UDFs, which I think you've shown clearly. So just to recap on that, UDFs can be scrubbed, so not imported at all. They can be remapped to an existing UDF, so that's like a merge,
Mhm.
or renamed altogether, or imported exactly as they were. So that's really all the different bits and pieces, not only for UDFs, but on UDFs. And then the last question was, can you validate schedules with the scrubber? So not really. This is very much a data controller more than analyzing whether the schedule is a good schedule. So the tool that we have that does that is our P6QA tool. So we don't have our webinar schedule up for July, August yet, but we'll definitely be doing another webinar on QA. And if you're interested, just send us an email and we can send you some webinar and information on that. So this is very much just to manage the data that you're sending out or receiving in. So I think we've tackled all the questions that have come through. If you have any, go ahead and send them in. We just want to make sure that if Sue's in the software and you want to see something, we can show it to you. And the simple scrub, Sue, do we want to just recap on that one more time?
Sure.
Okay.
If you want to do that.
Yeah, let's do that.
Again, if you have something that's very easy that you just want to prefix, or you want to handle all of your global data and roll it down, or choose not to import it at all, we can get those scrubbed out in a very simple manner. We essentially, you could put your separator here, put your prefix on the ones that you do want to import. You could choose to roll down at both the global activity and the global calendars, roll down to the project level, or you can choose simply to just not import certain pieces of data. So these are the options that we have available for that simple scrub. And again, you wouldn't have to go into each one of these individually and handle them. You could handle them in like one fell swoop if that's what your need is.
Yeah. Yeah, and then if there are some exceptions, you can kind of piggyback the two to some extent. So yeah,
Yes, you can.
okay, okay, good. So I think we're okay on questions. So
Okay.
why don't I go ahead and take it back and do the wrap up? And if you do have questions, keep throwing them in the question room, and we'll tackle them. Okay, so Sue did the deep dive on how it works. Hopefully, you saw things that you could see would be helpful for your group to avoid having to have separate databases, avoid loading the projects in, doing all the cleanup, then bringing them into production. That's a pretty common way people are doing it. And depending on the schedule, if you've got to do that a few times a month, it's still kind of very time consuming. So the way that we sell Scrubber on a per scrub basis. Okay. It's not by user, so you can deploy it to your whole team. It's by the number of scrubs. And we have different levels of packages depending on how big your group is and how much importing you do. So we have our standard, our professional, and our corporate packages, and they have different bundles basically. So if the tool looks interesting, reach out and we can talk more about what the best package would look like for your group. So I think some of the things that you have hopefully seen is it's pretty easy to use and it's very comprehensive. There's a few extra things we're adding to the tool to make some things even easier, like resource assignment scrubs, expense scrubs, and stuff like that. That's on our next release on the roadmap. So it is a tool we are continuing to add functions to, particularly for the clients that are using it. As Sue said, that Microsoft project was for a client. It was on our hit list, but they brought it further or closer on our hit list to get it done because they needed it. So we just deployed that this week or last week. So new feature. So giving some feedback right away. That was one of the first clients that we worked with. That was a DOT, and they have a lot of contractor schedules that they're dealing with. They deal with 50 to 100 every 2 weeks. So they needed a very quick way to scrub them, give feedback. So they were really our key client that helped us build out a lot of the functionality. And this made it easier for not just the lead schedulers to take those schedules in. It was now able to be done by the more site engineer folks who are dealing with the contractors as well. So that really made a big sigh of relief for the lead scheduler. So they weren't the only one importing. Okay. And some of you may know that it's not the security that you need to have around importing is a little scary to give it to everyone. Okay. So sometimes the importing can be a pinch point. And then the fact that it automatically flags what's coming in so you can see it, you can do all the nice remapping, really makes it easy to use and repeatable. So those definitions are now repeatable. That's very important. So you can have a more senior person help set up the definitions, and then maybe a more junior person can actually run them because they've got that framework already put together. So that's a big thing. And of course, keeping your system clean and keeping the data accurate. So we've got more and more clients who are looking at P6 reporter type functions to push their data into their own reporting engine, whether it's Power BI, Tableau, etc. So having a clean system where your area, your equipment references, they're clean, that's hugely important. And of course, we talked about the calendars and the accuracy. You don't want calendars colliding and changing dates and things like that. So I think we've been able to tackle that very well. So again, hopefully you saw something of interest. Please take a look at our webinar schedule. We've got many different tools that help make P6 better, more user-friendly, and save you time. So we've got a lot of different tools. Our QA tool, as I mentioned, our P6 loader tool, our updating tools, taps and caps, our warehousing reporting tool, P6 reporter, and I'm sure I've forgotten some. Okay, P6 calculator, which lets us add so much functionality into P6. I use it on just about every client rollout because they want different things, and this allows us to create good functions, roll downs, roll ups, all sorts of different data management. Okay, so take a look at our webinar schedule. Again, we don't have our new one out for July, August, but we'll have one soon. And there could be other things that could make your life better and working with P6. So let us know how we can help. So I'll send out one last quick poll. It's only just to allow you to communicate how you might want us to keep following up. So you can go ahead and answer that if there's value in that. That way we know if you want to call or whatnot. Great. So I think we've tackled all the questions. We'll stay on for another minute and see if there's any other questions. And we'll wrap up in just a second. I think I'll stop the recording here. And I've shared Sue's info if you want to reach out to her, or if you want to give us a call, you can use our North American or our Philippines number for the people who are closer to the Asia zone.